I'm here in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and coming in from our Washington, D.C. studio is the CEO and president of Lightbridge Corporation, Seth Grae. Welcome to the broadcast. We don't have time at Davos, Seth. It's fantastic to have you joining us from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Sweta. It's wonderful to be with you.
So we wish you were here in person because there's a lot of conversation that's happening about public-private partnerships and how these partnerships are integral to supporting new innovative technologies. And the voice of the nuclear sector is missing. So it's so critical to have somebody like you representing the sector to really contribute your knowledge about where new technologies in the field are going. So just to give the audience a little context, we talk about how airbags in cars revolutionize how we approach cars. And similarly, the next generation of nuclear fuel can completely change how people imagine the future of nuclear energy. Many believe that the next generation of nuclear fuels can steer the nuclear industry into a safer, more affordable, and more climate-friendly future. But these new technologies need to reach commercial viability, and public-private partnerships will be crucial in ensuring that happens. And so I can't think of a better person to speak on this than you, Seth, especially because of recent news. It's really exciting to share with our global audience that Lightbridge has just announced a strategic partnership with Idaho National Laboratory to start testing its next generation nuclear fuel. So this is exactly what we're talking about here in Davos, right? These private-public partnerships to see innovation into commercial viability. So Seth, before we get into public-private partnerships and why they're so critical to seeing these new technologies really make it to commercial viability, tell us a little bit about Lightbridge. What is Lightbridge nuclear fuel, and what makes it different from other nuclear fuels?
Nuclear fuel has only changed incrementally in the last 60 years. Lightbridge has reimagined nuclear fuel from scratch using modern metallurgy, modern science, modern engineering, to design a new optimized fuel for use in the current reactors or new ones. This fuel is designed to dramatically enhance the safety, the non-proliferation, and the economics of nuclear fuels, as well as allowing reactors to load follow with renewables on a zero carbon grid. So we think this is a very important product for over 400 reactors that are out there, and what we expect will be very large numbers of small modular reactors that will be coming in the next decade plus.
So this nuclear fuel that you're describing to us, it's really exciting. And to really see it make its way into use for society, for our energy needs, we need to have strategic partnerships. And you just announced a strategic partnership with the Idaho National Laboratory. Tell us a little bit more about this. Why is this so important for not just Lightbridge, but the nuclear sector potentially as well?
The U.S. government has designated Idaho National Laboratory as the lead national laboratory of the United States for nuclear reactors and fuel for nuclear reactors. And there are facilities there, like the Advanced Test Reactor, that were originally built for government use only, mostly to develop and test fuels to power submarines and aircraft carriers, but now can be available to private industry, like Lightbridge, for new innovations for the private sector. So there are facilities that the government has that the private sector doesn't have that can help move along innovation very quickly. It's also very important when you see the government evaluating a technology and putting some of its own resources into it to help bring in further private sector interest and investment, where most people in the private sector don't have that same capability to evaluate a nuclear technology. And seeing the government invest and putting resources in leverages private sector investment to help move things along much more quickly than if this were only happening in the private sector.
So the partnership you just described with Idaho National Laboratory, this is really important to see innovations through, and talk about it a little bit more broadly. Why do we need these types of partnerships, and why are they so critical for the nuclear sector?
Well, the nuclear sector in particular has lost the ability to test fuels overseas that the industry had relied on. There was a lot of testing in Russia, which is not allowed now by the US government, and the US companies wouldn't want to go there anyway. There was a test reactor in Norway that closed. There was a test reactor in Canada that closed. So these test reactors at Idaho National Laboratory are really the only ones left in the world for major significant testing by American companies. And the government turning these into what are called user facilities and signing contracts with private companies to give them access are allowing technologies to be tested and commercialized that frankly otherwise couldn't be.
So relationships like what you just announced with the Idaho National Laboratory are critical, and you've described why. And we obviously would benefit from seeing more of these types of public-private partnerships take off. So what do you recommend? How can we replicate what you just announced? This successful collaboration needs to be scaled if we're going to see nuclear technologies to support nuclear energy for not just the United States, but around the world, actually make its way into reality. How can we continue to see these kinds of collaborations develop and be nurtured?
Well, I think other government facilities at other US national labs and at other laboratories and institutes around the world can start to be made more available to industry, not just for government use. And the innovation that's coming out of industry really can pick up if they know that they quickly can get into testing, prototyping, demonstrating the product in these facilities. We have very good and advanced modeling and simulation for nuclear fuels now, but to combine that with physically testing the fuel, compare that to what came out of modeling and simulation, then adjust the coding for modeling and simulation, has the testing in the reactor and the modeling and simulation working together in ways that actually are more effective than either alone, where you can model then more accurately what will come on the next test in the reactor and then confirm it during the test. So it's a very virtuous cycle between a lot of the modeling and simulation being done in industry and access to reactors in government. And I think access to more government hardware would be very good to help spur innovation.
So We Don't Have Time viewers have had the opportunity to tune in to Davos through the We Don't Have Time broadcast at Davos that has been collaborating with the SDG tent and the Hoos Institute. We've been sharing all the various climate solutions that are being supported through private-public partnerships and that are being accelerated to actually reach commercial viability. So tell us a little bit about where nuclear fuel fits in to that solutions spectrum.
Well, I think it's necessary to meet climate goals by 2050. Nuclear, for example, in the United States provides under 20% of the electricity, but more than 50% of the non-emitting electricity. There's just nothing like it in terms of being able to scale to massive amounts of clean power. And Lightbridge will help the existing reactors produce even more clean power before we build new reactors. It will allow small modular reactors to produce more power with better economics than with the current fuels. So I think that nuclear as a growing part of a diversified energy mix will just be essential to meet climate goals. And I think Lightbridge Fuel will be a very important part of that.
It absolutely will be. And this is part of the ambitious agenda that has been discussed at Davos and that is coming out of this week that all of these various public and private decision makers are spending together. The ultimate goal is to reach the climate ambition agenda that has come out of COP27, that's come out of COP15. And we know that nuclear has to be a critical component as part of this solutions matrix. And so we miss you here in Davos. You're not missing out on the Wi-Fi connection, but aside from that, your message has come through clear, and we look forward to sharing it with our global audience, whether they are physically here in Davos or wherever they're tuning in from around the world. Thank you so much for sharing your news announcement with us.
Thank you, Sweta.